Hey everybody. We are waiting right now for Kamala Harris to come out and give her concession speech. Obviously not the video I wanted to be making today, not the video you wanted to be watching today, not the speech you wanted to be hearing today. I wish I had some wise words and knew what the right thing to say right now was, but I don't. I feel just as shocked as I did, was it 8 years ago now? And obviously, worried about what the future is going to look like. Worried about what the country is going to look like, worried what it means for a lot of people. One thing I do know, and let me know if my audio, this isn't my usual uniform here, so let me know if you're having any audio issues here. Let me know that you can hear me and see me okay, just so that I know that we're all good to go on the stream here. Okay. I think we are good to go. All right, everything's all good. Like I said, I wish I knew the right thing to say. For people saying don't concede, look, this was, at this point, it's silly of us to delay the inevitable. I think that to go back, let's talk about a few different aspects of this. I'm gonna make another video about my thoughts on all of this too, when I can actually collect my thoughts and give some semblance of a coherent message here. But I think a few things that we have to remember. I know there's going to be a lot of finger pointing and blaming from people who think that, they have all the answers. The fact is that nobody expected this in very much the same way that pretty much nobody expected Trump to win in 2016. And we are contending with a right-wing media machine that operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, hums along from Fox News to AM stations all across the country, to all of the top podcasts, to massive influencers, TikTokers, people on Instagram, people on YouTube, people on Rumble, people on Discord. There is a propaganda machine on the right that we can't even come close to contending with. People ask me all the time, why don't you run for office? The reason that I don't want to ever run for office is because the media is so much more important in the environment that we live in than actually being in office. And we haven't come close to scratching the surface in terms of being able to replicate what the right has been able to replicate. And in large part, by the way, that is the fault of not only a media that has both sides itself into absolute oblivion, and what the consequences for that mainstream media are going to be moving forward now that Trump will be president, and he's already threatened to revoke the licenses of CBS and ABC. So we'll see whether they think that was a good idea to both sides themselves into oblivion and equate everything that the right does with something that the left did. We'll see if that was a smart decision. But also the Democrats, who pretty much looked at the media as their only avenue to communicate with people. And so we never bothered. The Democrats more broadly have hardly bothered conferring any strength onto the progressive media ecosystem. Even to this day, when we have our politicians need to do some announcement, make some proclamation, do some interview, it's always, let's go to ABC, let's go to CBN, let's go to CBS. These same people who have wrapped our message for years and years and years into this false equivalency bullshit, both sides bullshit. And they've been complacent with that. They've been completely satisfied with focusing all of our our power, our energy, our megaphone into the hands of people who have proven over and over and over again that they're not going to wield that power responsibly. Look, mainstream media is not on the Democrats' side. They are there because they have corporate sponsors, and they will get voices on the left and right because they don't want to piss anybody off, and that's their priority. They are businesses. They are businesses just like any other business. Their business is not democracy. Their business is making sure that they make money for their shareholders and not alienate some broad swath of the population. And so their focus right now is not on making sure that they do what's right, or not making sure that they call a spade, and when there's an authoritarian in front of them, that they call out the authoritarian. Their focus right now is making sure that they have voices on the left, voices on the right, voices in the center, so that everybody feels nice and coddled and pandered to, and that they don't make anybody angry, and then they can continue to have some relevancy in today's media market. And Democrats have been fine with that. Republicans smartly have invested so much time and energy and resources and validation into right-wing media. Why do you think Ben Shapiro is the size that he is? Why do you think Barstool Sports are the size they are? Why do you think that Steve Bannon's podcast is as big as it is? Stephen Crowder, Candace Owens, all of these right-wing influencers. How many times have we seen Trump retweet and repost Jack Posobiec and all these right-wing assholes, these provocateurs? It's because they know what happens when you validate people who are doing messaging for your party. And it's been so difficult to get Democrats to do that because, well, we've got CBS, we've got ABC, so that's all we need. Those people aren't on your side. How many times did the New York Times run Hillary's email stories on their front page? These people aren't on Democrats' side. And so this asymmetry, this massive asymmetry is at play, where Republicans have created a media infrastructure, validated a media infrastructure that exists solely to prop up Republicans and lie about Democrats. Democrats, meanwhile, continue to heap all of this goodwill and influence and validation onto the very outlets that continue to screw them the fuck over every single time. Every single time. So that's one structural advantage that we were contending with. A right-wing media machine that, again, exists to serve the Republican Party, no matter what they have to say to do it, no matter what they have to do, no matter how they have to lie, no matter how much they have to concoct things. We're in an international environment where incumbents are losing left and right because of global inflation that occurred as the result of an influx of money that poured into countries in an attempt to stave off recessions after COVID. I mean, this is complex stuff. And what are you supposed to do? Let people die, starve, get kicked out of their homes? You have to give them something to live on, but that causes inflationary consequences, and that makes that made things a lot more difficult around the world. And so incumbents around the world lost in nearly every country on earth. And so we are not immune to that, obviously. And at the end of the day, really, you know, there are a lot of issues that we're contending with that in this political environment that for a lot of people feel nebulous. And when you say democracy, when you say, you know, whatever it is, I mean, look, like all of the issues, for a lot of people who are just waking up, going to work, going to the supermarket, trying to get by, nebulous issues like democracy or women's reproductive rights or gun safety, if they don't directly impact them, they're just not going to resonate as much as a price tag on something. And I don't even know that we could have explained it, really. I think it's just a matter of this was the reality, and Democrats were going to get punished because they're the party in power. The irony, of course, is that a lot of the reason that costs were so high is because those very companies, food manufacturers, food retailers, hid behind inflation while raking in record profits. And I don't think we message that enough. The reason that food prices were so high, the reason that people are getting pinched so hard is because these companies wanted more money. And Kamala hit quite a bit on the campaign trail, rightly, on the fact that, she would take these people to account. But look, it's one thing to say that you're going to hold people who are price gouging to account, and it's an entirely different thing to be a person in this country who is just contending with high prices. And when you hear a politician say that they're going to hold people accountable for raising prices, it doesn't change the fact that they're still paying high prices. And so, we are contending with the right-wing media ecosystem. We're contending with global inflation. We're contending with corporate greed. These are not easy things to be able to sidestep. And by the way, if you think that these companies are going to back down just because Kamala and the Democrats told them to, if it means it would hurt the Republicans who are waiting in the wings to lower their tax rates, you're kidding yourself. These companies want Trump in office. These corporations want Republicans in power. They know that they're going to heap tax benefits onto them. And so if it means that they have to do something here and there that will ultimately hurt Democrats, sure, it might hurt Americans more broadly, but hurts Democrats in office, and it'll help usher in Republican rule so they can solidify the 2017 tax cut and confer even more tax advantages to millionaires and billionaires, they're going to do it. And they did. And that's why we're in the environment that we're in right now. So I guess I'll try to give some practical advice here, advice that I'm trying to take myself. And that is, during this time, I know people are afraid, I know people are worried, I know people are exhausted. I'm exhausted at the prospect of what the next 4 years are going to look like. Make sure you're taking care of yourself immediately. Eat, sleep, drink, rest. Make sure you have your circles of people. You don't have to wallow in misery. You don't have to wallow in misery. And if you are, which may be likely, you don't have to do it alone. But the number one thing is not to disengage, not to give up. Do not reward the worst people with exactly the thing they want. We didn't win, but that doesn't mean that we didn't have over 60, probably close to 70, if not 75 million Americans come out and do the right thing. And the good guys didn't win. But it wasn't for nothing. It's never for nothing. It's never for nothing when you do the right thing. But disengaging completely would be giving them exactly what they're looking for. And so I beg of people, take time, take a day or a week or through the holidays, and do not disengage. Do not tune out completely, because that's exactly what they want. And the last thing, after all of this, after everything that we've dealt with, the last thing that we should do is, again, heap rewards onto people who deserve it the least. For those just joining right now, we are about 20 minutes out from Kamala Harris coming out and giving a concession speech. The state of the race right now is that she obviously lost the race to Trump. Democrats have lost control of the Senate, and the House is in flux right now. So I don't know what the deal is going to be with the House. We're waiting to find out. There's still a lot of races left to be called. As you remember from 2020, California takes days, if not weeks, depending on how close these races are. So we're going to keep an eye on that. Very much hope that we are able to eke one out of the House, but to be perfectly honest, it's not likely. It's probably more likely that Republicans come into office with unified control of government. Let's see if I can show you what the... That's what we're looking at right now. 186 to 201. Still a bunch of seats that we are waiting for results in. So it remains to be seen what happens with the House here. And those votes will be counted, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully we do have a bulwark against what Republicans are going to do in office here. But again, I would caution not to disengage, because if ever there was a time that we need people to be sounding the alarms about everything that's going to happen, it's going to be in the next couple of years. Remember where you were in 2017 when Trump took office. It took less than 2 years before Democrats had retaken the House. So it's going to be a fight, it's going to be long, and it's going to be exhausting, and we can take some time before we have to figure out what the best way to organize is, but remember that we've been here before and we've come out the other side. So we will come out the other side again. If you guys have questions, I'll do my best to answer them while we wait for this speech, so you can throw them in the chat. Please just make sure to tag my name so I can see it. If you want to participate in the chat, make sure to subscribe to this channel. I'm hearing people ask, like, where should I move? Don't move. You're not going to move. You're going to stay, and we'll figure out a way to organize, and we'll figure out a way to fight back, and it's not going to be today. But remember, you're not a tiny blue dot in a sea of red. We had lost all of these races on very close margins. There are still tens of millions of people who are in the exact same boat as you, tens of millions of people who did the right thing, tens of millions of people who are able, to have some integrity in their decisions here. So do not feel like you are alone. There is a massive, massive, massive community of people. We didn't get enough people out. There were issues, again, that we were contending with, whether we're talking about a right-wing media machine, whether we're talking about global inflation, whether we're talking about corporate greed sending prices higher, and corporations knowing that any pain or pushback or punishment would be dealt to the Democrats in power, and that would usher in Republican rule, who would then help them by passing corporate tax cuts. So this is all like, there is a reason that the Elon Musks of the world support the Republican Party. It is because they get to hoard more money. They knew that. None of these people are stupid. They know what the consequences of their actions, and they know the advantages of their actions. And so they did that. But it's going to take time. Like we were contending with massive, massive barriers that we weren't able to overcome this time. Is there any way Kamala could still win with a recount? I wouldn't bank on that. If it was one state, maybe, but the race has been called in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in Georgia, in North Carolina, and I believe in Nevada. Do I think that Biden hindered this election by starting to run again, or do you think this happens regardless of that? That's a good question. Looking back in hindsight, and of course, look, if it went the other way, everybody would say how brilliant of an idea it was that Kamala waged a 100-day campaign and we pulled it out in the end, and like we should replicate this formula every single time. But everybody can Monday morning quarterback. So at this point, let's see if I can answer this question. Do I think that Biden hindered the election by starting to run again, or do you think this happens regardless of that? I think that in hindsight, what would have been best, now that we know this didn't work, I would probably say what would have been best is if Biden said that he was only going to run for one term, handed it over to somebody who was able to more effectively make a case, perhaps. I mean, it's easy for me to say that because we know it didn't work with Kamala. And so it's easy for me to say, oh, well, that didn't work, so this definitely would have worked. But the reality is that I don't know. I don't know if all of the forces against us were going to be too much to contend with this time. Look, inflation was so high for so long, and people were hit by it, that I don't know that any other Democrat would have been able to succeed in an environment like this. This election was a referendum on the people in power, on the party in power. And so if we had Gavin Newsom or Pete Buttigieg or Wes Moore, would it have been any different if people are saying the Democrats are in power right now and my eggs are more expensive and so I'm going to punish them by voting in Donald Trump? Who knows? I mean, we could be in the exact same position if Biden dropped out. Biden announced that he was a one-term candidate, and we had, a proper primary and Gavin Newsom emerge and run a proper, 2-year campaign and do all the things. I don't know. I don't know if it would have mattered, because if people are just so fed up over the prices that they're paying or deluded by this idea that Donald Trump presided over some great period of prosperity and that there weren't 1 million people dying from COVID and that his administration wasn't some hot steaming dumpster fire, so I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, I guess it's interesting to think about, but I don't think anybody went into this thinking that we were in as bad a position as we were. And so it's impossible to say what we should have done. And of course, it's impossible to prove a counterfactual. So all I can say is that knowing that it didn't work, of course, it's easy for me to say that we should have tried something else. But the reality is that I don't know if anything would have helped in this environment, knowing that incumbents are losing all around the world, knowing that inflation hit people hard in the pocketbook, knowing that a lot of the prices weren't going down because the companies that were raising prices and raking in record profits had a vested interest in keeping prices high. How do we fight back? We're going to figure that out. Probably not today, but it's going to mean two things. It's going to mean we figure out a way to organize better. We figure out a way to spread our message better. And first and foremost, as I was saying before, is we don't disengage. I know that there's a feeling among people that what we want to do is just like kind of check out. If you need to take time for yourself, take time for yourself, 1,000%. You're no good to the movement if you're exhausted and cynical and hungry and sleep deprived. So take care of yourself first and foremost, and then we're gonna figure out the best way to come together and do it. And we've done it before, and there was a massive community. And in 2018, after the 2016 election, in 2018, we delivered Democrats the House by the biggest margin in modern American history. So I know it's small comfort right now for me to say, hey, in 2 years things might be better, but in 2 years things might be better. And 8 years ago, things were bad, and 6 years ago things got better. And then 4 years ago things got a hell of a lot better. So I know that it feels like we're in a perpetual doom loop, and we're in this cycle of just cyclical dread, and it's hard to fight back against that right now. But we've come out of this before, and it's gonna require everybody staying engaged if we want to come out of it again. Let me see, by the way, if I can find a feed with a little bit of a better audio. So I already know, let's see, that we're going to have a better feed here. So let's just fix this real quick. Bear with me for just one quick sec. I'm going to get a different feed. Okay. Another issue would be third-party votes. And yeah, another issue is third-party votes. The fact is that if we look at, let's pull this up right here so we can see. If we look at Pennsylvania, for example, sorry, let's go to the presidential recs. Third party, 60,000 votes. Would it have made a difference? No. Wouldn't have made a difference in Pennsylvania. Would it have made a difference in Wisconsin? 17 plus 12, so 30,000. 169. I mean, if she got every single vote from the independent and Green Party candidates, it would have been pretty much tied. So, like, is third party an issue? Yeah. Would it have made a difference in this election? Probably not. But I think the broader problem is that the Democratic message wasn't compelling enough to the point where people felt that they needed to vote for a third-party candidate. And again, that's something that we're going to have to figure out in this post-election autopsy here. Do I think Trump's craziness appealed to more people, or we just didn't reach out to enough voters? That's a great question. I don't think Trump's craziness appealed to more people. I actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think he got fewer. I think he got fewer votes than he did. Well, I know that they're still counting the votes, but right now he's at 72 million. We're at 67. The problem wasn't that Trump was more popular. The problem was that we weren't. The problem was that we missed out on 16 million voters that came out in 2020. That's the principal concern here. So that's partially an us problem. And that's not to minimize the fact that we have way too many people in this country who've decided that the way that Trump acts and the way that his acolytes act, the disqualifying ways that they act, is permissible. The fact that Mark Robinson, like an avowed neo-Nazi, got 40% of the vote in North Carolina is not okay, and it's indicative of a fundamental sickness in our country right now that I think we're going to have to figure out some way to contend with, and that's a problem for somebody that is way smarter than me. I don't know what the answer is. I know we have an epidemic of loneliness in this country. I know we have, more people are glued to their phones than actually communicate with people in person. I don't know. I mean, much smarter people are going to be able to diagnose that problem than I am. But to answer the question, no, I think that Trump's craziness, I think that Democrats lost in spite of how Trump behaved. And again, to go back to all of the things, I think we were contending with a lot of systemic barriers that I don't know we would have been able to overcome regardless of what candidate we had. To have somebody as reprehensible as Trump, who ran as bad a campaign as he ran, for him to still win goes to show that the forces against us were pretty insurmountable. So. Kamala was a prosecutor, not a people's candidate. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. For a lot of people, like, look, Trump ran a campaign in 2016 predicated on law and order. He won that campaign. The idea that that's not a resonant campaign slogan is kind of undermined by the fact that it was a winning campaign slogan for him in 2016. And Kamala did run a pretty populist campaign. I mean, she had proposals that probably weren't shared enough with people, whether it was, $25,000 for first-time home buyers, building 3 million housing units, $50,000 for small businesses, holding corporate price gougers accountable. I mean, it was, legalizing marijuana. There were a lot of elements that were populist, but I don't know if it's that she didn't have enough time. I don't know if it was that she didn't focus on it enough, if people didn't hear it enough, or conversely, if it just didn't matter because people just didn't want Democrats in power because things were too expensive and they have this rose-colored glasses idea of what it looked like when Trump was president, which, by the way, is owed in large part to the fact that that he had right-wing media running cover for him and reminding people or brainwashing people on a daily basis. Things were better, things were better, things were better. You were rich, you were rich, you were rich. Everything was so much better. Everything was so much cheaper. Everything was so much more prosperous. Everything was so much calmer. Everything was so much more peaceful when Trump was in office, day after day after day after day. And if you repeat it enough, people are going to start to believe you. I've said it myself. The one virtue of Trump is that he knows how to repeat stuff. He knows how to sear his messages into the cerebral cortexes of the people who listen to him. And so when he says build the wall 10,000 fucking times, people are going to remember it. When he says, make America great again, when he says, lock her up, he repeats these things over and over. Right-wing media does the same. And when they pound this message into your skull on a daily basis that somehow everything in life was better and rosier and cheaper and you were making more money and everybody was happier and dudes were having sex more and women were like whatever it is, right? Like whatever these ideas that they were trying to spread, when they say them over and over and over, eventually people are going to believe them. And I think people started to believe them. And that is the power and the advantage of a media ecosystem that exists to do the bidding of one political party, which all unto itself is a huge advantage. But when you have no antidote to that on the left, then I think the power of that ecosystem really is unbridled. And I do wish that Democrats more broadly would wake up and stop heaping all of this goodwill and influence and validation onto mainstream media as if they're on their team, because they're not. How much did the uncommitted movement affect the results? I mean, it had some effect, but she was gonna lose regardless of the uncommitted movement in Dearborn, Michigan. If I'm not mistaken, and I may be, I don't know that there was a single county in America where Democrats performed better than they did in 2020. I don't know if there is I don't know if in a single county in the United States, Kamala overperformed Joe Biden's performance. That is not the uncommitted movement. I can promise you that there are people in Alabama who are not failing to show up because of Israel-Gaza. There are people in Utah, in Salt Lake City, Utah, who are not showing up because of what's happening in Gaza. Was Kamala worried about proposing solutions that contradict Biden? Probably. I mean, in a way, there is some degree, I'm sure, of hesitation about undermining her very administration. Maybe Biden should have come out and said, hit me on 1, 2, and 3. Hit me on these things. I'm a politician. I'm an old school guy. I get how it has to work. Hit me on these things. Like go to town. That might have been helpful. I don't know. I mean, again, Monday morning quarterbacking, it's easy to try to diagnose all this stuff, but I'm not sure that would have really done anything. But it's a good question. Was Kamala worried about proposing solutions that contradict Biden? What's going to happen to Trump's criminal cases? They are going to go away. That's the long and short of it. The simple answer is that the criminal prosecutions are going to go away. The DOJ is probably going to withdraw its own prosecutions of him in Washington, D.C. and in Florida. And so now we're left in a situation where, because Merrick Garland was so worried about the optics of politicization, now we're in a position where it is November 6, 2024, and in a case that never went forward, nothing ever happened to Trump, and he will withdraw those cases because Merrick Garland had to wait for years to do anything, and then eventually just appoint a special prosecutor, but never bothered to do anything on his own. But God forbid we have the optics of politicization, even though one might argue that things look pretty politicized now when you let somebody get away with armed insurrection against the United States. That seems pretty politicized, but God forbid the Democrats do it. I hope if we're in a position, and I can sit here in a few years and we can see Democrats in power, that we look back and say, hopefully we actually wield the power when we're given it and aren't there to mollify treasonous Republicans with mealy-mouthed, weak solutions and people who aren't willing to actually wield any power because, God forbid, we look politicized. For years, Republicans have been saying that Democrats are weaponizing the government anyway. They've been saying Democrats are weaponizing the government anyway. And so if they're saying you're weaponizing the government anyway, why are you bending over backwards not to give the optics of politicization when you're already getting hit for the exact thing that you're trying to avoid? It doesn't make any sense. But still, they wouldn't do anything. Merrick Garland waited so long to bring these prosecutions forward. Wouldn't even do them himself because, God forbid, it looks like you're investigating your political opponent. Meanwhile, Fox News every day is saying that the government is weaponized against Trump. The House launched a weaponization of government subcommittee aimed at Democrats for the thing that Merrick Garland was bending over backwards not to do. And so we didn't do it. We got blamed for doing it anyway. And now Trump walks away scot-free. That's what you get when you have a weak, spineless DOJ that doesn't actually move forward with any prosecutions against somebody who's committed one of the gravest crimes against democracy in our country's history. Can Biden pack the Supreme Court before he leaves? I don't believe so. I believe that would have to be through an act of Congress, and we don't have Congress. We're in the minority in the House. What are the odds that Trump dials back the insanity once in office again? I mean, what are the odds that Trump became presidential the first time around? What are the odds that Trump ran a campaign that was less focused on vengeance and insanity? I mean, this is the most unhinged he ever was in his final pitch to voters. Can you imagine now that he doesn't have to face any of the voters, whether he's going to, all of a sudden decide that he's going to do that change of tone that the media has been telling us about for the last decade? Why didn't the Harris campaign go all out on attacking Fox News, the whole source that made people blind, instead of pointing towards Trump? It's a good question, but this is so much larger than the Harris campaign going out against Fox. We don't need to everybody knows that Democrats don't like Fox News. The issue isn't attacking Fox. The issue is building up a media infrastructure that is able to take on Fox, and we don't have that. And every time we have the opportunity to build up something on our own, we just keep leaning on mainstream media. Like, what Democrats should do is focus on independent, progressive media. I mean, not to be self-serving here, but we have nothing to combat what Fox and the Steve Bannon podcast and the Daily Wire and the Daily Caller and all of these right-wing media propaganda outlets do for Republicans. We don't have that. And when we have the opportunity to build something like that up, we just don't. And we just assume that the New York Times is good enough for us because, I'm sure those journalists are vote for Democrats while they're doing Hillary's email stories on the front page 69 fucking times before the 2016 election. Like, these people are not on our team, but still nobody recognizes that, hey, we shouldn't continue to use all of these outlets as like our messaging apparatus. But they do. When there's big interviews for Democrats, they go onto the mainstream media. When there's big stories for the Democrats, they give it to mainstream media. And mainstream media puts it in their own packaging, which are often both sides' packaging, instead of what Republicans do, which is go on to Republican outlets that exist to promote the Republican agenda. And it's not a good agenda, but they have such a stranglehold over these outlets and over the every ounce of oxygen in the media that they're able to do it successfully and manipulate people and lie about whatever it is they're selling. But still, Democrats pretend like, we've got the New York Times, we've got CNN, so it's fine. And it's not fine. And there is a massive asymmetry at play here. At what point do we abandon the Democrats and start our own party? I don't think that's the answer here. We're not going to be able to do that. Starting a new party is not. I mean, practically speaking, like that's not the answer. The answer is organizing with the, figuring out the best way to organize moving forward using all of the resources and advantages that a major political party has. Starting a different party would basically just cede everything to Republicans. If you think that Democrats are weak right now, Democrats lost by a few million votes. That's the reality of it. I know that it feels like we've lost everything and that there's some massive mandate for Trump, but it was a few million votes. And we have to retool and reorganize and figure out better messaging. And I also think that once the country feels what Donald Trump, the consequences of what Trump is going to do, they're going to remember why it was so bad to have him in office. And a lot of these kids who voted did not grow up in a world where they were listening to Donald Trump's meandering speeches and feel the consequences and direct impacts of his presidency. And they will. And I think it'll be a different story. A lot of these kids who are 20 years old, they were 12 when Trump took office. It's hard to try to convey accurately what a disaster and how dangerous Trump was back in it's hard to convey what a disaster he was back in 2017 and 2018 to somebody who was literally like 11 years old at the time. So we can say it until we're blue in the face how bad he was, but the fact is that they don't know because they weren't around. They weren't paying attention to politics. When I was 11 years old, I also was not paying attention to politics. So, but they'll see it. And again, it's, everything is cyclical, and we'll be in a situation in a few years from now where people are going to recognize the consequences of having elected him to office. That much I'm sure of. How much did Kamala lose by on the popular vote? So far, we're looking at 5 million votes, but a lot of votes left to be counted. Millions of votes left to be counted. California has probably another 10 million votes left to be counted. Arizona probably has a couple million left to be counted. So I wouldn't be surprised if 10 million more votes came in. For those who are just joining, Kamala Harris will be delivering her concession speech shortly. We are about 10 minutes behind right now on that. Not sure when she's going to come out, but it should be any second now. Real quick, one thing I will say is to the point of building up independent progressive media. If you haven't yet subscribed to this channel and you want to follow along as we try to navigate what's to come together, please subscribe to this channel. I don't do paid ads. I don't do sponsorships. I don't put any of my content behind a paywall. I never will. But the best way to support my work is to just subscribe to this channel. It's completely free, doesn't cost you anything. I'm getting a lot of, I'm worried. I'm not here to tell you that you shouldn't be worried, but I am here to tell you that there is a massive community of people who are in the exact same boat as you, and also here to tell you that we were in a very similar situation almost identical in 2016. Obviously, a little bit different here, but it took 2 years again before Democrats delivered the biggest House victory in modern American history, and so there is a world in which 2 years from today we are sitting here celebrating Democrats retaking the House and retaking the Senate and delivering a repudiation to Trump and also offering a bulwark to his agenda. So I'm saying it's, we have come out of this before, and if we continue to stay engaged in this stuff and activated here, that we can come out of it again. I have seen it. We've all lived through it. That's when I got my start in politics, was in the beginning of the Trump administration. And what followed was multiple cycles where Democrats were able to take power and deliver a lot of good to Americans. And I think if it wasn't for COVID and global inflation and prices going up and companies hiding behind inflation to raise prices while they raked in record profits of their own, I think Democrats would be in power right now, and we would be having a much different conversation. That isn't going to happen again. And so it's not going to be this doom loop where, every few cycles we're just back to a full autocrat. But I do think that we have the opportunity, if we stay informed, stay engaged right now, to come out of this thing the other side. Do I think Russia finally got involved? Yeah, Russia was calling fake bomb threats into polling places across the country. Absolutely. And at this point, that's the norm in our election, because people have decided that, half the government has decided that foreign interference is fine if it benefits them. All right, false alarm. What do I see as a viable path to move us to a popular vote in this country instead of the Electoral College? I think that's the one silver lining that can come out of this. Maybe Republicans will look at this and say, we won the popular vote. Let's, in fact, move to a popular vote system instead of keep circling the same 7 states over and over and over and over again and ignoring so many Americans. There's more Republicans in California than half the country. You can make the argument to Republicans and say, if we went to a national popular vote system, then you can actually start talking to people, not making your own constituents feel completely forgotten where they live. And so I hope that's some small silver lining that comes out of all of this. Do I think Trump will actually pardon the January 6th insurrectionists? Yes, I do. I do think he will. Will Trump still go to trial? No. Not in the federal prosecutions, he won't. There's a standing DOJ guidance that says a sitting president can't be indicted, so he won't be prosecuted. Those cases will be withdrawn against him. Can Biden use his presidential immunity granted by the Supreme Court to save us from this nightmare? No, he can't. There's nothing that he would realistically be able to do. And by the way, anything that he would try to do, he would get sued. And if you think that the Supreme Court would say, "Oh, well, we said he could do anything, so I guess we're just going to abide by that," they don't care. They'll say, nope, he can't do that. Oh, we said that a president can do anything. We changed our minds. Who are you going to appeal to? We're the Supreme Court. Do I think it would have been better to hold a primary instead of just her being selected by the DNC? It's a good question. And as I mentioned earlier in this stream, it's a fair thing to ask, and it would be easy for me to say yes, but only because I know that this didn't work. So at the time, think about what that would have meant. Where we are in July, the election is in 3 months. We've got a black female vice president who is, by definition, next in line. The base of the Democratic Party is black women, and you're going to tell the black woman that even though her job is to be next in line, that she's not? I mean, that would be a good way to alienate the core of the Democratic base, only to engage in a bruising primary campaign that would have left progressives mad at moderates and moderates mad at progressives, and no time to heal, and all of that time would have been spent destroying Democrats amongst each other. And none of that time would have been spent focusing on Trump, and he would have gotten away scot-free, and we would have been left in shambles anyway. So the way that it worked out, no, I think the only option, given that Biden dropped out so late, was to rally around Kamala Harris. There was no other way to do it. You would have pissed off the base, rightfully so. You would have squandered time and money attacking each other. Trump would have gotten away scot-free, and there's not enough time to do all of this stuff. So no, not better to hold a primary. The only thing that, in retrospect, might have made more sense is if Biden dropped out or announced that he was going to be a one-term president. That's the only realistic option where we would have had enough time to vet a candidate. But with all of that said, it might not have mattered. Again, incumbents across the world, across the entire planet, are losing re-election in this environment because of high inflation, the global phenomenon of high inflation. So I don't know that it would have mattered if we had Barack Obama himself running again for president. I think this was an environment where Democrats were going to get punished, and they were. I think it was an environment where people, whether it was real or imagined, and I believe there were both, I believe there are people out there for whom they were contending with higher prices, and it did hurt them. And there were people who just decided, because they consume right-wing media, that Donald Trump's presidency was a time of great prosperity, and not a daily deluge of COVID misinformation and this sundowning megalomaniacal narcissist yelling about how we should drink Clorox. So I don't know that it would have mattered either way. Do I think Trump will appoint Aileen Cannon as Attorney General? He could. A very real possibility that he could. We already know that she'd be willing to do anything for him, so he could. What steps do we have to prevent him here? What will Republicans say when prices stay the same or rise? They'll make excuses for him. That's what they always do. They'll pretend that they're not rising. We can see eggs go from $3 right now to $19, and they will pretend that it's not happening, and everybody will believe them. That's how it works. Again, they have an entire right-wing media ecosystem that is designed, that is purposefully designed to be able to manipulate the people that watch. So I'm certain that if Donald Trump does move forward with his plan to tariff everything 60, 200, 2,000%, and when prices inevitably rise, that you'll have Fox News there explaining why actually prices are not as high, and it's just the Marxist, liberal, radical Democrats trying to convince you of something and not to believe your lying eyes. That is the benefit of having a media ecosystem that exists to serve as propaganda for one political party. Tim Wall is walking in right now. I believe we should be moments away from Kamala making her concession speech right now. By the way, as I talk about the benefits of having independent right-wing media for Republicans, I'm insofar as I can make this not sound self-serving, but I would ask you, if you're not subscribed yet to this channel, if you want to support my work and help build up independent progressive media that can actually do half the job that Republicans have working for them, the best way to do that is to subscribe to this channel. Again, I don't do sponsorships or paid ads. The best way to support my work is just to hit the subscribe button. It is completely free to do so.
President of the United States, Kamala Harris.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you all. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you. So let me say, and I love you back. And I love you back. So let me say, my heart is full today. My heart is full today, full of gratitude for the trust you have placed in me, full of love for our country, and full of resolve. The outcome of this election is not what we wanted, not what we fought for, not what we voted for, but hear me when I say, the light of America's promise will always burn bright. As long as we never give up, and as long as we keep fighting. To my beloved Doug and our family, I love you so very much. To President Biden and Dr. Biden, thank you for your faith and support. To Governor Walz and the Walz family, I know your service to our nation will continue. And to my extraordinary team, to the volunteers who gave so much of themselves, to the poll workers and the local election officials, I thank you all. Look, I am so proud of the race we ran and the way we ran it. Over the 107 days of this campaign, we have been intentional about building community and building coalitions, bringing people together from every walk of life and background, united by love of country, with enthusiasm and joy in our fight for America's future. And we did it with the knowledge that we all have so much more in common than what separates us. Now, I know folks are feeling and experiencing a range of emotions right now. I get it. But we must accept the results of this election. Earlier today, I spoke with President-elect Trump and congratulated him on his victory. I also told him that we will help him and his team with their transition, and that we will engage in a peaceful transfer of power. A fundamental principle of American democracy is that when we lose an election, we accept the results. That principle, as much as any other, distinguishes democracy from monarchy or tyranny. And anyone who seeks the public trust must honor it. At the same time, in our nation, we owe loyalty not to a president or a party, but to the Constitution of the United States. And loyalty to our conscience and to our God. My allegiance to all three is why I am here to say, while I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign. The fight for freedom, for opportunity, for fairness, and the dignity of all people. A fight for the ideals at the heart of our nation, the ideals that reflect America at our best. That is a fight I will never give up. I will never give up the fight for a future where Americans can pursue their dreams, ambitions, and aspirations, where the women of America have the freedom to make decisions about their own body and not have their government telling them what to do. We will never give up the fight to protect our schools and our streets from gun violence. And America, we will never give up the fight for our democracy, for the rule of law, for equal justice, and for the sacred idea that every one of us, no matter who we are or where we start out, has certain fundamental rights and freedoms that must be respected and upheld. And we will continue to wage this fight in the voting booth, in the courts, and in the public square. And we will also wage it in quieter ways, in how we live our lives, by treating one another with kindness and respect, by looking in the face of a stranger and seeing a neighbor, by always using our strength to lift people up, to fight for the dignity that all people deserve. The fight for our freedom will take hard work, but like I always say, we like hard work. Hard work is good work. Hard work can be joyful work. And the fight for our country is always worth it. It is always worth it. To the young people who are watching, it is, I love you. To the young people who are watching, it is okay to feel sad and disappointed, but please know it's going to be okay. On the campaign, I would often say, when we fight, we win. But here's the thing. Sometimes the fight takes a while. That doesn't mean we won't win. That doesn't mean we won't win. The important thing is don't ever give up. Don't ever give up. Don't ever stop trying to make the world a better place. You have power. You have power. And don't you ever listen when anyone tells you something is impossible because it has never been done before. You have the capacity to do extraordinary good in the world. And so to everyone who is watching, do not despair. This is not a time to throw up our hands. This is a time to roll up our sleeves. This is a time to organize, to mobilize, and to stay engaged for the sake of freedom and justice and the future that we all know we can build together. Look, many of you know I started out as a prosecutor, and throughout my career, I saw people at some of the worst times in their lives. People who had suffered great harm and great pain, and yet found within themselves the strength and the courage and the resolve to take the stand, to take a stand, to fight for justice, to fight for themselves, to fight for others. So let their courage be our inspiration. Let their determination be our charge. And I'll close with this. There's an adage an historian once called a law of history, true of every society across the ages. The adage is, only when it is dark enough can you see the stars. I know many people feel like we are entering a dark time, but for the benefit of us all, I hope that is not the case. But here's the thing, America, if it is, let us fill the sky with the light of a brilliant, brilliant billion of stars. The light of optimism, of faith, of truth, and service. HU. And may that work guide us, even in the face of setbacks, toward the extraordinary promise of the United States of America. I thank you all. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. I thank you all.
All right. So that's that. That is the concession speech. We know that it will be a peaceful transfer of power, something which Donald Trump ensured, if he were to have lost, would have never been the case. But that's how it goes. The word of the day here is asymmetry. There is a massive asymmetry at play with how Democrats treat Republicans, with how Democrats treat the rule of law versus how Republicans treat the rule of law, with how Democrats operate within their media infrastructure versus how Republicans operate within their media infrastructure. I think right now, a main principle that we have to consider looking forward is that we need a fundamental change in how we deliver information to people. And again, I know that this is probably not too surprising that the guy you're listening to streaming right now says that you need to support independent progressive media, but we need to support independent progressive media, and it doesn't need to just be me. I should be a small part of your media diet. But the fact is that Democrats have an over-reliance on a media infrastructure that exists to both sides and equate everything that Republicans do with everything that Democrats do. And so long as we rely on those people, on the New York Times and the CNNs of the world to deliver information to people, while Republicans rely on Steve Bannon and Fox News and OAN and Newsmax and Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens and Jack Posobiec and the rest of these right-wing MAGA influencers who have way more clout, the Joe Rogans of the world, the Pod Save America, the Joe Rogans of the world, the Barstool Sports of the world, the Alex Joneses and Nelk Boys. These people have so much influence because Republicans have laid hands on them. They have embraced these people and hugged them and validated them to a degree that Democrats haven't. And so long as Democrats continue to confer all of their validation onto these outlets in the mainstream media who are not on their team, Republicans will win. Because we're fighting an information war right now that Democrats are not equipped to win. And, I do everything that I can to build up the progressive media ecosystem. I've helped everybody from, I've helped everybody from the guys at More Perfect Union, Pod Save America, whatever it is, to build up their Abdul El Sayed, talk to the Midas Touch guys, like whoever needs it. I think it's incumbent upon us to build up the progressive media ecosystem, but it is not enough what we have, and it doesn't come close to scratching the surface of the way that Republicans dominate mainstream media, the way that Republicans dominate radio, podcasting, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. We cannot hold a candle to these people. And so first and foremost, I think we need to take a fundamental look at how we distribute information in this country if we're Democrats, because giving it over to the New York Times so they can wrap it in their both sides packaging ain't it. And it hasn't been it for a long time. And so long as the best we can do is get 50% credit from the New York Times, while Republicans are getting 110 credit for burning the country down, and yet they're still getting treated like heroes, as long as that asymmetry exists, we will continue to lose. And we are losing Gen Z, and we'll continue to lose young people if we're not able to reach them exactly where they are. I do what I can on this channel. I'm just one guy. I can't do that much, but we need to continue building up this ecosystem. And I think it's incumbent upon a lot of Democrats to embrace independent media in a way, to the detriment of these mainstream outlets, by the way, in a way that they haven't before, because there is just a disparity that's too great. And it'll be really interesting to see what happens when Donald Trump continues to attack the licenses of CBS and ABC, whether those people think that it's still worth it to both sides the issue of an autocrat into oblivion here. They have a vested interest in protecting democracy too. The media is so focused on not seeming biased in favor of Democrats that they've forgotten that you can be biased in favor of democracy, and that the last thing an autocrat has any need for is a free and fair press. But that all remains to be seen. With that said, here's my shameless ask, and that is, if you're not yet subscribed to this channel, I'll be doing the work for the next few years here as we figure out a way to organize and come together and message appropriately and claw our way back. And we've done it before. We did it in 2018 and again delivered the biggest repudiation to Republicans in the House in modern American history. And that was after Trump's first term. I promise you, mark my words, right now, we will do it again. But it's going to take time, and it's going to be a matter of letting people see who Trump is and what he can do, and reminding people why he shouldn't be in power. But right now, that's a lesson that he's going to show them and that they're going to have to learn. but it's incumbent on us in the meantime to know how to organize, to know how to communicate with people, to know what messages work, to know what messages don't work, and to not just hand the reins over to people in this country who are not willing to meet the moment. And I think so much of our media over the last few years has not been willing to meet the moment. And I will be sick to my stomach if, like, the reason for all of this is so that corporate media can usher in another Trump presidency because they think it'll be good for their bottom lines. I really hope that that's not the case. We'll never know, because that's not the kind of thing we would ever find out, but it's possible. And I think when you have people that lead with money, it shows, versus people who lead with a desire to do the right thing for the right reason. In the meantime, again, some practical advice I have for people is, first and foremost, to take care of yourselves. Eat, drink, sleep. Take time off if you need it. It's okay. Look, for a guy who relies on, for my livelihood, I rely on people watching my videos. If you don't want to watch, take time off. Do it. Like, it's okay. It's okay to take time off. It's okay to take care of yourself. It's okay to come back when you're ready. That's fine. All I would ask is that you come back, because we don't win this fight by thinning our ranks. And it's going to be incumbent on everybody to stay engaged. That is the only way we win. Republicans want nothing more in the world than for you to throw your hands up and say you give up. That would be the biggest gift in the world. The way that you're feeling right now, do not hand a gift to the people who deserve it least. Do not reward the worst people in the country right now who want nothing more than for you to surrender. I know that that's hard to do right now. I know that that's probably the last thing that you want to hear, and that probably doesn't resonate right now, but I promise that is going to be the most effective thing, because I promise you, 2 years from now, we will still be here, and we will be in a situation where we will at least celebrate taking back the reins of power insofar as we can in Congress. I can promise you that much. But that starts with making sure that people know that they are in for a fight, and it's going to be a fight, and it's going to be a slog, and there's going to be days that are really difficult, and then there are days where we want to give up, but we can't. So we have a big community of people. I know that it feels, again, as I mentioned before, like we're doing this alone, but we're not. And there are going to be, when all is said and done, we will have 70 million people who came out and pulled the lever to do the right thing in this country. It won't be enough to exceed what Trump got, and that's a broader question that we'll have to contend with in terms of the rot that has pervaded the Republican Party and has brainwashed and manipulated way too many Americans. That's a different video for a different day, but just know that there is a massive community of people who are in the same boat as us, and this is not worth giving up on. But again, I promise you, bookmark this video. We will be sitting here 2 years from now and celebrating. I can promise you that much. But the only way that happens is if people do not disengage. People will see what the Trump administration is going to bring. I think in large part, and I mentioned this before, in large part a reason that we lost so many members of Gen Z in this election, especially compared to previous elections, is because they didn't know what it was like during a Trump administration. You can't tell somebody who's 19 years old that 8 years ago when they were 11, it was really bad, you know? But they'll get a firsthand account of it in the coming years. In the meantime, our job, of course, is to continue fighting, and we will. So If you have some questions, you can throw them in the chat. I'll spend a few minutes answering them, and we'll try to make sense of the situation that we find ourselves in right now. So go ahead and tag my name, throw a question in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. In the meantime, while I'm waiting for those questions to come in, again, if you'd like to support my work and sign up for this, what will be a slog, but one that I think we have a vested interest in making sure to fight, please hit the subscribe button on my channel. If you're watching on Twitch, please follow on Twitch, or same thing with Facebook. That is the best way to support my work. I don't do paid ads or sponsorships. Simply subscribing is just the best way to support what I do. Who do I support for 2028? Oh man, I think it's just a tad early on that one. But as soon as I have an idea, I'll make sure to elevate voices that I think are worthy of elevation. Do I think we'll ever see a female president? That's a good question. It's a good question, and I've thought about this. And the last two female presidential candidates that we've had have both lost. It's difficult to say that they've lost because of a culture of misogyny in this country, or if they've lost because they were going up against Donald Trump, who just had a more potent message than them. I can't say that Hillary Clinton lost to Trump in 2016 because she's a woman, because we don't know if somebody else running against Trump, Biden in 2016, whether he would have beaten Trump. I don't know. There's no way to prove that because we can only choose one route. At the same point now, if we had the strongest candidate in the world, if we had Barack Obama 2.0 running against Donald Trump in this election cycle, would that have been enough to contend with global dissatisfaction, but certainly national dissatisfaction over high prices, over inflation, to contend with this rose-colored view of Donald Trump's presidency? I don't know. The hard thing about saying that the reason that these candidates lost is because they're women is because we don't have a way to prove a counterfactual, right? We don't have a way to say, well, how would he have done against male candidates because we didn't run them. So I don't know the answer to that question. If I had to guess, being perfectly honest with you, I don't know that the next candidate for the Democratic Party will be a woman. I don't know that they'll take that gamble, just to be perfectly honest. Who knows? Should it matter? Not in a million years. I mean, I hope that we'll see Pete Buttigieg, a gay guy, be president one day. Is the country going to do it? Was the country ready for a white woman in Hillary Clinton? Was the country ready for a black woman in Kamala Harris? I don't know. I don't know the answer to this question. I don't know whether it means Democrats revert back to a straight white guy to run as their nominee. I don't know. It shouldn't matter. None of these factors should matter at all. But will they? They might. They might. So will we ever see a female president? I'm not sure. We've tried it twice, and they haven't worked out. So I don't know. It's a sad state of affairs when a disqualifying factor for broad swaths of the country is some completely arbitrary piece of demographic information, Who should care who somebody sleeps with? Who should care what somebody looks like? Who should care what your gender is? It doesn't make any difference, any material difference in anyone's lives. But this is the country we live in, where the same party that pretends to hate identity politics traffics so deeply and so thoroughly in it on a daily basis. Will we get a special election to fill Vance's seat in Ohio? I believe that the governor, DeWine, is going to make an appointment to Vance's seat in Ohio, and he may stay there until the next election. I'm not sure. Can Biden pass a law that allows him to extend his term, or can Trump pass a law that allows him to extend his term past 4 years? Remember, passing a law I don't believe so. No, it's in the Constitution. So you'd have to amend the Constitution, and to amend the Constitution, you have to get 2/3 of the states to agree to it. It's not going to happen. No. How long will I be vacationing? I don't know, but I need a minute. What do we do when he starts rolling back rights and programs like food for kids and benefits for seniors? We fight back however we can. We are still waiting to find out what our margin is going to be in the House. And so let's look at the House race margin. So this is where the House stands right now. Obviously, looking better for Republicans than it is for Democrats. So if we lose the House, then remember we still have the filibuster intact, which means that a law won't be able to be passed in the Senate unless we have 60 votes. If they eliminate the filibuster, then they would be able to do it. And then we look to the states to be able to implement programs to help people. And I think there would be some success with that. But we'll cross these bridges when we get to them. And hopefully we don't cross them at all. Am I worried about my safety because he won? I don't know. It's something I've thought about. If he is as despotic as he's promised to be, do you want to be the guy who is talking to 40,000 people live right now, critical of him? I don't know. Is that going to stop me from being critical of him? No. But, it is what it is. Do I think Kamala rejoins the Senate? No. I mean, she would have to run against Adam Schiff or no, sorry. She would have to run against Adam Schiff or Alex Padilla, but I don't think she's going to do that. So I think at this point, I think she'll go the way of other presidential nominees and perhaps serve in administrative positions in, other administrations down the line. What do we do to combat rampant disinformation that clearly had a major effect on the voters? Republicans have cemented themselves as a post-truth party, and I don't see that changing. That is the perfect question. We have to be able to combat them on that battlefield, and that is building up a media infrastructure of our own. That's why I do what I do. I know that people ask me all the time when I'm going to run for office, and the answer is that I'm not going to run for office because I think it is more important to fight this fight where most people are actually impacted, and I think that that's in the media. So that's going to be my focus, is staying in the media and fighting this fight in the media. To combat the disinformation, this is the environment that we live in. And you just have to be able to reach more people and make a more effective argument than the other side. And it's going to be a fight, and it's going to be a slog. And I wake up every day and I try to do it to the extent that I can. And hopefully I'm able to move a few people. Hopefully I'm able to be more persuasive than the other side. Hopefully we have enough people in the left doing this stuff and getting on their phones and getting on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube Shorts and regular YouTube and doing podcasts and going on TV and doing their thing and making a more persuasive argument. We weren't able to do that this time around. That's the reality of it. We weren't able to do that, but I think that we still have to try. And we just have to make sure that we're better the next time around. And it's incumbent on our Democratic politicians, again, for the 10th time that I've said in this stream, to embrace independent progressive media so that we can build up an infrastructure in the same way that Republicans have theirs. What do I think is going to happen with Ukraine? I think the Democrats are going to try to get this last $6 billion to Ukraine, and then I think that they're not going to get any more funding. So I'm not sure what happens to Ukraine after that. And I do hope that Europe steps up and helps Ukraine, because I don't think the U.S. will. Why do I hate Trump? I hate Trump because he does not respect the Constitution. He doesn't respect anybody's bodily autonomy. He is a petty tyrant. He has sold out every facet of this country for his own personal gain, financial gain, and political gain. He doesn't care about the environment. He doesn't care about keeping kids safe. He doesn't care about making sure that people have health care. He doesn't care about the dignity of workers. He doesn't care about unions. He doesn't care about reproductive rights. And he doesn't care about democracy. And I think he is a danger to this country and probably the worst thing to ever happen to it. That's why I hate Trump. Why concede so soon? Aren't there still a ton of ballots that are still being counted? I think it doesn't matter at this point. The outlets that call know what the margins are. They know how the ballots, they know once you have margins in these races where the number of remaining ballots aren't going to exceed that margin, they can just go ahead and call the race. It's just math. But look, the races aren't done until all the votes are counted and results are certified by election officials and then county officials and then the governors. So if by chance Kamala were to get all these votes that come in Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin, then of course it'll be certified correctly. But there are people who just know how to do this counting, and I think it just, we have to accept the reality at this point. Do I think they'll go after critical streamers soon? I don't know. I mean, as a critical streamer, I hope not. But we'll see. I'll keep doing my work every day. I'll stay here on YouTube every day and doing my thing. I hope that for you guys watching that you're able to subscribe and to support my work and to stay in this fight. Do I think that Joe Rogan interviews with Trump, Musk, and Vance affected the election? I think that everything affects the election, and these elections are won on the margins. And if you have 30 million people who watch an interview with Trump and Joe Rogan, and those people were low propensity voters who decided to come out and vote for Trump, then yeah, I think it affected the election. Trump didn't get as many votes as he did in 2020. So it's not like he had some major boon in terms of support. The problem was that Kamala got even fewer than Joe Biden. So it wasn't really that there was some groundswell of like unprecedented support for Donald Trump. The issue is that there wasn't some groundswell of unprecedented support for Kamala Harris. And so what we'll be doing over the coming weeks and months is figuring out why that is and how we can reconfigure our messaging to make sure that the next time we do. How do I think the world will be affected? I think our efforts to combat climate change are going to be severely hampered, and I hope that the rest of the world steps up to a degree that they hadn't before. I hope that corporations, and I'm like laughing at myself as I say this, but I hope corporations step up and pick up the slack where the U.S. government doesn't. I hope consumers do and buy renewable energy products, cars, whatever it is, and do their part to protect the environment. It's going to be difficult to do that without the U.S. government support. And I do hope that the Trump administration, insofar as that's even a realistic possibility, continues the work that was started with the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS Act and all of the clean energy manufacturing that's begun. Shouldn't we be focusing on informing people about the war between classes, poor versus billionaire, workers against corporation owners? Yes. That is what I have been doing for years. That is literally what I say almost on a daily basis. Are enough people doing it? No. Am I going to keep hammering away at that? Absolutely. Here's what I like to say that I think pretty well signifies the message I'm trying to get across. Republicans have a vested interest in making sure that people making $60,000 a year think that people making $19,000 a year are the problem to give cover for people making millions of dollars per year. And that's what they're doing right here. The notion that you have the literal richest person in the world, Elon Musk, running cover for a Republican Party should be everything you need to know about who this Republican Party's priorities are. That is a message I hammered away at every single day. And I think everybody needs to make that message. But do I think the Democrats are going to have to shift? And if so, which way? And which way should the Democrats go? Yeah. Clearly something's not working. We could do what the Republicans did and just bury our heads in the sand and pretend that Kamala Harris won for the next 4 years and wage a revenge tour. But the reality is that something isn't working with our messaging, and if we have to figure out which way to go differently here. And I think that is more of a populist appeal, more focusing on the working class, more focused on economic issues, and more coming out and figuring out a way to make sure that Republicans' messaging about culture war issues isn't as resonant as it has been. How many times did Trump run that fucking ad about like trans athletes? He put like $50 million behind one ad about trans athletes. And it's like, that impacts 5 people, but they ran it over and over and over. And Democrats don't combat it because we just assume that it's not even worth humoring. But the fact is that stuff works. The culture war stuff works. And we have to figure out a way not to just ignore this stuff because we think it's not going to have any impact, but to actually combat it in a way that's effective and meaningful. Shouldn't we have seen this coming with the polls being tied and Trump outperforming the national poll numbers in the last 2 elections? No, because Democrats were told that we would suffer a red wave in 2022, and Democrats held on to the Senate, and they lost the House by like 4 votes. In 2020, we were told that Trump was going to win, and Biden won and had unified control of government. So the polls have been wrong before, and we know that the pollsters waited on Trump's behalf, weighted their polls so that they would be more favorable to Trump, and so we just assumed that they were Trump heavy. Do I think when the Congress is sworn in on January 3rd, because it's a Republican majority, they'll impeach Biden to tarnish his presidency? No, I don't think so. I mean, they're sworn in on January 3rd. They've got 2 weeks. It's going to be, for what? He's already lost. They just want power. I don't think they care about legacy. It's not like anything like that really impacts them. They have no shame. They're not going to look at Biden and say like, "Oh, you were impeached. Look how that'll tarnish your legacy." If they had shame on anything, they wouldn't say half the shit that they say. They have aligned themselves behind, as the party of family values behind a guy who is a 34-time convicted felon because of an affair he had while his wife was at home with their infant son. The notion that these people have shame or think that like somebody's tarnished legacy is going to really impact them, they don't care about that. They just want power. The Heritage Foundation mission is to give all government power to the executive under religious Unitarianism. What stops them now that they have complete loyal majority across all three branches in Supreme Court? Not much. Not much. And we could see a fundamental shift in how the government works. And if Donald Trump is successful in implementing his Schedule F changes that were prescribed in Project 2025, then we might see a very powerful executive that oversees a DOJ and an FBI and an FCC and an IRS that is loyal to the president. We could. Which is why it is so important that people not disengage and that people make sure to fight back and sign up for this fight here. Like I said before, I'll be here doing this, hopefully in a better mood and maybe even bothering to put a suit on, but I'll be here doing this on a daily basis. So if you're not subscribed to this channel, or if you're not following this channel, please go ahead and do that. This way you can stay in this fight with me. Again, I don't take ads. I don't do sponsorships. That is the best way to support my work. It's also the best way to stay on top of my work. So if you're not able to subscribe, please subscribe. Otherwise it's going to be a slog here of just making sure that people know what's happening and that people are making sure that we're engaged and activated so that when 2026 rolls around, we know what to do. And again, as I mentioned before, this has happened before where Trump has won the election and within 2 years, we had delivered the biggest rebuke to Republicans in the House in modern American history. And that will happen again. Mark my words right now. How long do I think Thomas and Alito will wait to retire? Probably not too long. I think both of them are going to retire. Trump will probably have had the opportunity to name 5 Supreme Court justices when his term is done. How do I see channels like mine surviving through another 4 years of this BS? They're coming for anyone and everyone against them. Look, the last thing I'm going to do is not do what I do because I'm scared of speaking out against anybody. So I'm just going to show up every day and do it, and that's it. Not much more simple than that. I'm not going to not speak out because I'm afraid of what jackbooted thugs might do. Fuck them. How do we talk to our kids about this? Mine are 7 and 9 and scared of Trump based on ads they've seen. That's a good question. I don't know that I'm qualified to answer it. But I will say that in the same way that people can be good role models, people can be examples of what not to be. And I think it's just incumbent on all of us to make sure that we present ourselves as good role models for the people around us. I have no kids, so it's difficult for me to be able to properly answer this question, but look, Trump will play the heel. I think that's a spot that he's comfortable playing, and they've been around forever. And I think that in the same way that Trump presents himself as that, there are going to be a lot of people that emerge as really strong role models and really effective defenders of democracy, and so for all of the bad that will emerge from this, there will be a lot of good that will emerge too. And so if you're looking for good role models and good people to point your kids to, those people will come out of what's about to come during the Trump administration. There's always the good that comes from the bad here. And so I think we just have to look for that. All right, let's do one more question here. I'm getting let's do two. Do I think that there will be what happens to the court cases now? The court cases will be withdrawn. So Trump will not face criminal prosecution in the DOJ for the DC case or the classified documents case. I presume that sentencing will be delayed or indefinitely delayed in New York, and I presume that that the RICO prosecution in Georgia will be suspended or indefinitely suspended. I'll do an episode of Legal Breakdown with Glenn Kirshner about exactly this question. So again, subscribe to this channel and keep an eye out for that episode. It's going to be coming within the next day or so. And let's finish off with one more. Will we ever have elections again? If it's the last thing that I do, insofar as I have some ounce of influence, and the rest of the people in the left-wing media and Democrats and pro-democracy Republicans, we will make sure we do. Insofar as I can do anything, we will. So, okay. We'll leave it there, mostly because I did a 11-hour stream yesterday, and my throat hurts a lot. So we will leave it there. And one last note. If you want to follow along in what will be probably a pretty tumultuous time right now, we could use the community. So if you're not yet subscribed to this channel and you want to support my work and make sure not to disengage from this community, I would highly, highly, highly recommend for you to subscribe. Again, it doesn't cost anything. It's just the best way to support what I do and to stay on top of everything that's happening. So with that said, I do want to offer a big thank you for people watching. This is a tough time to open up YouTube or Twitch or Facebook and tune into this stuff. I know everybody feels really shitty today, except for the trolls in the chat who are feeling good. But I appreciate, you not disengaging right now, because that would be the easiest thing to do. I know that a lot of folks on the left have been texting me today and saying that their follower numbers are plummeting and that people are checking out, and I don't blame them. But my request to everybody watching is not to do that, because I do think that our inevitable victory in the future is wholly dependent on our ability to make sure that we have people who are ready to fight this fight and who are going to stay engaged, and that's the only way this works, is if we have an audience of people who is willing to fight here. But take the time you need. If you want to take a little bit of time off, days, weeks, the next couple months, do it. Do whatever you need to do. You're no use to us if you are exhausted and despairing and sleep deprived. So take care of yourself. The holidays are coming up. Be with community, be with family, eat, sleep, drink water, and when you're rested and ready, come back and we'll be here ready to fight alongside you. So that's it. That's my message. I wish I was able to be a little bit more articulate in this moment, but a little bit in shock based on what happened. But I do appreciate everybody watching right now and sticking around, because that matters in this moment. I know the easiest route right now would be to just wipe our hands of everything and watch Below Deck all day. And I may watch Below Deck for the rest of the day, but I do appreciate you guys tuning in for right now. And we'll figure it out. We'll figure out next steps. But thank you. Thank you all. All right. Well, until the next time, see you guys later, and thanks again.